Hey friends, welcome back to the show. Today I sat down with Nate Pontious in the studio. He came over from his local ranch to tell us all about how he accidentally became a regenerative farmer. Nate actually started out as a kid on a farm and left with no intentions of returning, but as life goes, it's sometimes unexpected. And Nate takes us on that journey as he went into the military, left the military after a few years, competed in CrossFit at the highest level, and now landed back here in Austin, Texas, running a farm, looking after life, thinking about becoming a father in the very near future, tending to animals, and healing the land as he does it. We talk about the importance of voluntary suffering so that when the involuntary suffering in life finds you, you are more in control. We talk about the importance of connecting to your food and really understanding where your food comes from. We talk about what it means to be a good man, to be a good father, to deal with the trials and tribulations of life. And we also talk about why bull beef is superior to all other meats. So let's get into the show. Nate Pontious, welcome to the studio, man. Just 6-minute drive away. You're a neighbor here. What's life like for you in Dripping Springs these days?
Much slower than when it was living in the city. I mean, right now you can't really complain. We've had a good deal of rain and the weather's fantastic after a mild winter. Pastures are real green, so things are good.
Things are good. That's what you want to hear in the farm life. You have quite a remarkable story. We have a lot of shared interests, and that's why I was really excited to talk to you today. But your story is pretty remarkable, from going into the military and kind of growing up there to reintegrating back into civilian life and pursuing CrossFit at a high level and now becoming a farmer regeneratively and all of that stuff. Take us on a little bit of a journey. Let people know who Nate is and how you ended up here, man, wherever you want to go.
Oh, dear. I mean, I don't particularly find myself terribly impressive, but, you know, I'll tell you whatever you want to hear.
I think I heard you say the Marine Corps maybe provided you some kind of structure, almost like a rite of passage in a way, like a growing up period. Is that fair to say?
I mean, sure. I mean, it's a very structured, regimented life. It's got to be. Everybody joins for a variety of different reasons. I joined because I wanted to be in the infantry and I wanted to go to the Middle East, and I wanted to go to war after seeing what happened on 9/11. I was just a pissed off young kid. I didn't really have any understanding of how the world worked, and quite frankly, I didn't really have any other options.
How old were you at that time when you enrolled?
I mean, I went straight away at 18 years old. So I graduated high school, and within like 2 to 3 months, I was gone to boot camp.
When you said you were kind of motivated to want to go there after you saw what happened in 9/11 and set the record straight, as it were, fight for your country, stand for something, the vision of that is very noble. What's it like to actually do it, to find yourself on the front lines in combat? I can't even imagine. Tell us a little bit about the experience of being an 18-year-old. I mean, you're just a kid at that point. It must be pretty wild to experience that firsthand.
Yeah, and you know, I guess that's why I have such difficulty articulating it, because what you said was it was like a noble thing to fight for the country, and it wasn't exactly that. It wasn't motivated by this deep desire to fight for my country because I love it and all that crap. I just wanted to fight. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the general sentiment of a lot of the other guys that I was in the infantry with was much in the same. That kind of life, it appeals to like the delinquents, the oddballs, the misfits, and the guys who don't really belong anywhere else. Like a lot of the guys I served with were not impressive by any means. And, you know, we found ourselves coming together in really tough times, and that was really great. But a lot of us were just really pissed off and wanted to fight. Most of the time, we didn't even know what we were fighting for, why we were fighting, who we were fighting, what they were fighting for. These are all things that that become a little bit hard to grapple with later in life.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that was always with you? Like this, is it a little bit of anger, a little bit of like shadow, a little bit of just like, I want I want to, like, men are almost built for war in a way. Do you always feel like you just wanted that? You wanted to suffer, you wanted to fight, you wanted to break shit?
I mean, for as long as I can remember, I've only ever had two aspirations in my entire life. One was to be in the infantry and go to war, and before that, I wanted to be a bullfighting rodeo clown. I've never had these big aspirations to do what most other people are trying to do with their lives.
Mm-hmm. Well, choosing two of those things, it seems like, would it be fair to say you feel the most alive when you're closest to death, like doing dangerous things? Have you always sought danger, adrenaline junkie?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a paradox between, the pain and pleasure, the alive and death. Like, there's certainly a lot of that going on.
Mm-hmm. I felt that in my own way. I was an angry kid. I used to, like, clench my teeth all the time and want to punch shit, and I ended up competing in MMA to, have a safe space to do that, where I can beat this guy up legally and I'm not going to get arrested for it, instead of fighting on the, the streets at 1:00 in the morning and all the drama that comes with that. So I feel that, and it's interesting because, you then got, I'm really interested in how difficult it is to kind of reintegrate back into civilian life after the forces, and the journey from that point on of, being homeless for a time out on the West Coast and then competing in CrossFit. But how difficult is it to go from that environment to reintegrate back into an army existence?
Well, there's a little bit of an element of, purposelessness. I feel you go from having a pretty deep purpose, which is literally just to survive. You have this sense of feeling that you're serving something greater than yourself, even though you might not potentially know exactly what it is. Like, whenever you're in war, you're doing things for the guy to the right and the left of you, and then whenever you get out, so you go in with this deep desire to fight, and you do that for years and years and years, and then you get out, and there's no more fight. There's nothing to fight. You're not needed to fight, but it seems like all you know how to do is fight. Mm-hmm. And so, like, what do you do when you got nothing to fight? I did the normal thing, which is what a lot of infantry guys do, is I turned to booze. Mm-hmm. I was drinking a lot and living in the city just to kind of numb myself for a long time. And, CrossFit was not like a saving grace by any means, but it simply gave me a target to start aiming at, something to, stop drinking, get my diet together, like focus on something, focus on improving my life, and like structure. Mm-hmm. It gave me structure, which is the familiarity of the Marine Corps. It's a very structured, regimented life. Going into the civilian world, it becomes pure chaos for guys like us who really thrive on the structure. So a lot of us need to somehow find something to get some structure back into our life. And, we have a lot of the skills and capabilities that we develop in the Marine Corps, but we just have to find that target to start aiming at to have that structure to thrive.
Mm-hmm. I think men are purpose-built creatures, and if they lose that target and the purpose has gone with it, they the good guys and the bad guys, and it's not necessarily fighting for my brothers on the left and right of me, but it's the fight against the barbell. It's a fight against the inner bitch. It's a fight against the suffering when you want to quit. What did you learn during how many years was this for you, like the West Coast and competing at CrossFit for a high level, and what did you learn?
Well, it was about 6 years. It took me about 6 years to get to the point where I was competing at the West Coast regionals. I learned a deep appreciation for my body, my health, the process involved with it. I spent all those years chasing that finish line of a goal to compete at that highest level, and whenever that end result kind of lacked a whole heck of a lot of fulfillment, it made me kind of reflect on, that wasn't exactly what I was after. I was more so after the entire process of it and the lessons and whatnot that I had learned throughout, and the structure that it created into my life. And then, kind of like what you just said that really resonated with me was, killing the inner bitch. Training was that for me. It was like exercising in and of itself is pretty boring to me for the most part. And so what I start to really, really find interesting is the carryover from, like you said, killing the inner bitch and training, that carryover into other aspects of your life, and the mindset that you can create from, holding onto the barbell for one extra rep, or, pushing a little bit harder for one extra second, because, from a competitive standpoint, I've lost podium spots, or I've not qualified for regionals after an entire year of training by one rep or 1 second. And like, those are really painful pills to swallow, but taking them into the next year, that pain really helps reinforce the behaviors you're going to need to be better that next year.
Yeah, the pain you can really alchemize and channel it into the purpose too. Today, not competing in CrossFit, and we're going to come full circle here into farm life and things like that, but to stay on this thread of like the importance, or how you frame the importance of voluntary suffering, even to this day. Like, how important is it for you to still do these things or seek discomfort? How has that changed over the years, and how do you still do that now without CrossFit in your life?
I mean, I still get into my ice bath every single morning, first thing. And, there's so much like just cringy stuff floating around the internet these days about, the toughness associated with getting into the cold bath. And really, it's one of those things that I'd really prefer not to do first thing in the morning, especially when it's really cold around here. But, it's the best thing that I do every day. I mean, it helps with my inflammation in my body, just, charges me up with energy every morning. And, just that sheer aspect of like, I am doing something that I would really prefer not to do. It really has that carryover into my life when, something might be going on with an animal, or, maybe Ramey wants me to do something that I'd really prefer not to do. Well, I did something that I'd prefer not to do this morning, and I'm a little bit, more set up to handle that discomfort, if you could even call it that. So, I mean, I guess that's about the only way that I'm really leaning into pain for, improving my life, I guess. I mean, I don't really find much need for it anymore. I still exercise every single morning, but it's more so just to like loosen up, limber my body, because, you don't really find that you need to push a prowler around a gym, or, carry kettlebells back and forth from one end of the gym to the other, doing fireman or farmer's carries or whatever, when I'm shoving round bales across my pasture, or, hauling hay bales, or carrying water buckets all over the place. So,
How much do you think gym fitness translates to farm fitness or life fitness?
I mean, that's a very broad question, because gym fitness, okay, fine. Take Rich Froning and like the types of training that they do, a lot of it, a lot of the carryover from like moving odd objects and whatnot. I would say the odd object moving in CrossFit has a lot of carryover into, farm life. But, the typical gym experience at, a 24-hour fitness or a Gold's Gym, using leg extensions or hamstring curls, or squatting on one of the Smith's machines or something, not a whole lot, honestly. Really, there's not like, it's just the odd objects that you find yourself carrying around. Like, nothing is evenly distributed on a farm. Nothing. Everything is awkward and hard to carry. There's no handles on anything.
like never in good posture. You've never got
Right.
that perfect flat back. You're always like twisting and leaning and like kicking a goat as you're trying to move.
Right.
Some stuff.
You grab a 95-pound lamb that doesn't want to be picked up, or a 200-pound calf that you're trying to move. It doesn't feel like a 200-pound barbell with nice little handles on it. It feels like it's 1,000 pounds.
Talk to me about some of the other aspects of your morning routine. So you've got the kind of the voluntary discomfort of getting in the ice bath, but you also have kind of this range that's more of like the, you know, like the get after do the hard thing. But you also, it seems from what I've heard, you have this nice rounded balance of stillness and introspection too. Tell me about some of the other importance of the things in your morning routine and the importance of a morning routine in general.
For me, the morning routine has always just been about, one, getting my mind right for the day. And I mean, I started doing it in the city, you know, balls early in the morning, because it was really the only time that was quiet. It was quiet enough and slow enough that I could hear my own thoughts and, you know, get my food prepared for the day, because, you know, that's always been a priority, is making sure that I have what I'm going to be eating throughout the day prepared, so that whenever I start putting out fires all day, I don't have to stop everything I'm doing and think about what I'm going to be eating. So, you know, once the nourishment is prepared, I like to do a little bit of reading before I move my body. You know, it could be anything ranging from poetry to psychology to philosophy, you know, reading a good story, you know, not long time, 15, 20 pages max, and then I start moving my body.
When you get into, actually, let's not go there right away, because I'm interested about the transition from city life, because when you say the city, it was LA, Hollywood, right? And you have an interesting story here now, coming full circle and being a farmer with all these animals, but you were getting in quite a bit of trouble just trying to have some chickens in LA. Tell me about that.
Yeah. So, you know, whenever I met Ramey, like the number one thing that we liked to do together when we first started dating was cooking and preparing all these meals together. And we always went to the farmers markets and we'd get all the fresh produce and whatnot. We ate a lot of seasonal produce. And for whatever reason, I can't say exactly why, I just started collecting up all the vegetable and fruit scraps and everything, and I dug a hole out in her yard and just started my own like little compost pile. Just started hoeing up the soil and working all the compost into it, and just over weeks and weeks and weeks just doing that, I started to like become a little bit fascinated with, you know, how the soil worked and watching it become more fertile. And then I started planting my own like vegetables and fruits. And we started eating that. We're like, wow, this is really tasty, very fulfilling. There's something to this. And then that kind of bridged into like, what else can I start to look at? Chickens. Having my own eggs, having my own form of protein would be really cool. What are the stipulations to having chickens in the city? Because we lived in a neighborhood in like just outside downtown LA, like in mid-city Los Angeles. Legitimately, the only thing I found was that you can't have roosters. Roosters crow, obviously. Other than that, as long as I was allowed to have 4 hens, and they had to be like X amount of feet away from your dwelling, X amount of feet from the sidewalk, all that stuff. So I got my 4 hens. I had like a little coop. I like constructed like a little wooden coop setup, and somebody in the neighborhood was not thrilled about me having chickens. I mean, you know, several of the neighbors were very cool about it, and I would give them eggs, right. And they were totally thrilled. And anyway, somebody was not thrilled. They first started reporting me to LAPD. LAPD was coming like, we got more important things to deal with than somebody with chickens. They sent like animal control. Animal control was like, well, from an animal welfare perspective, these hens are very healthy. The coop is clean. They don't smell. They're not noisy. Like, you're not going to hear from us again. And so whenever those 2 strikes didn't work, whoever it was in the neighborhood that was not thrilled got a hold of like LA City Board of Planning or something. And so I started getting thousands of dollars of fines in the mail for unlawful construction or unpermitted construction in a historic zoning code or something, which was just constructing my coops. And so that kind of, brought that to a screeching halt.
Was that one of the biggest, light bulb moments for, all right, we got to get out of this space?
I wouldn't say that. There was just a series of things that started to add up. Like the city was great. The city is great for like establishing yourself. There's so much to do to, be able to hustle and make money and make yourself. But the point that we got to, the quality of life was just not matching up to, the cost of living, really. I mean, the weather is incredible. You can't deny that. But, we were dealing with a lot of homeless issues. Like I had my chickens stolen once out of the yard. We're having,
no way.
yeah. We're having like thieves come up onto the porch and like steal stuff. And like, it wasn't a great environment for Ramey and I talking about raising a family. And with my growing fascination of like trying to get closer to the food and whatnot, we knew we needed a little bit of space, so here we are.
Yeah.
So
talk to me about that. How long have you been out here now on this land in the dripping area, and where did you start? What was the first animals?
Been out here for going on 4 years now. I started with some cows and goats and chickens, obviously. Cows were first. And, just learned as I went which animals worked well for the particular environment that we were in and the land that we were afforded.
What's it been like to feel a sense of purpose in the land now and in the caretaking of these animals and the structure that comes with that? Because it's very routine oriented. I know we were talking off air about how you have to do these tasks every day. You have to go out, you have to troll the fences, you have to top off the water, you have to look after life, right? How many little bodies and souls do you have on that land now? It's probably dozens of living creatures that you're looking after. Does that bring a sense of meaning and purpose that is, maybe was missing for a little while?
I mean, I've got well over 200 animals on the place.
Wow.
as of right now. I don't know if routine would be quite the word to describe it, just because whenever I think of routine, it is an aspect of sameness, and really there's not a whole heck of a lot of that from like the start the start of me stepping outside the door every single morning. There's not a whole heck of a lot of sameness, and it's really forced me to like become more adaptable and patient to the way that Mother Nature works. Like you're not gonna biohack Mother Nature into your routine or anything. There is that aspect of structure in a sense that like you have things to do every day, but like the order in which that I accomplish all of my tasks every day, like from this morning before coming here, for example, is completely dependent on what kind of lay of the land I find myself stepping into every morning, where like, because I'm constantly moving my animals from pasture to pasture and each animal species on different areas, I basically have to have a broad overlook of what's going on and prioritize from there every single morning, and then start my tasks from there.
Tell me how you kind of accidentally became a regenerative farmer. It's a buzzword these days. Like we love supporting that for obvious reasons, but you didn't really set out for that. You kind of accidentally stumbled upon it by kind of managing the land and observing the animals. What did you notice, and what's that journey been like?
Yeah. I had no idea what regenerative agriculture even was. I still don't really know if I could give you a proper definition of it. But yeah, like you've said, I think it's become the new buzzword, and it just so happened that the ways that I find myself doing things now are labeled regenerative agriculture, and I simply got there by way of noticing that, hey, whenever I constantly move my animals, they don't get sick, they don't die, they stay healthier, and my land gets better. And when my land gets better, my animals have better, more diverse plants to eat, and they continue to get healthier, and the soil continues to get healthier. And, you know, doing a little bit of seeding on my pastures behind the animals, you know, to help regenerate and regrow new plant species, that helps as well. And apparently that is now, you know, labeled regenerative as well. And I also started to realize that the more and more diversity that I had in my animals on interacting with each different pasture, each different environment, that also helped, you know, with creating more like diversity in my pastures, and then also keeping my animals healthier. So I can give you a pretty, hopefully simple explanation. So you've been doing this as well. Have you had, especially in Tennessee, they get a lot more rain. Have you had any issues with parasites?
Oh yes. Yeah. The goats.
So that's something that is hard to explain to like a lot of people who aren't familiar in the space. But what would you call a parasite? They're like organisms in the grass and the soil and whatnot.
Exactly. Particularly when it's super wet, they seem to like just be more prevalent, and they're getting their feet stuck in, and then they're living in the spaces, and they just spread, and they can make them sick.
And then so why do we not see like parasites just decimating and killing deer population and zebras and whatnot?
Yeah, I'm going to guess because they're never confined to a space. They're constantly moving.
They're constantly moving, but then there's also the aspect of so much diversity grazing. And so my equine species, my donkeys and my horses, they eat a particular parasite that affects sheep and cows. They break that cycle. They neutralize it because that particular parasite does not affect equine species. Then I bring my sheep and cows onto that same pasture. They eat the parasites that affect equine species that do not affect them. They neutralize and break that cycle as well. So as long as I keep that constant cycle of rotating diverse animals onto and different species onto pastures, I don't find myself being dependent on chemicals or anything.
It's fascinating. There's this trope that humans are the only animal that are really confused about what to eat. We've completely lost the plot, and we're just, you know, running through getting fast food.
And we're also the only species that takes everything from the land and gives nothing back.
Yeah. One of the things because we've dealt with this parasite issue with our goats, and we're obviously trying to stay as natural as possible. So we're using herbs, and I'm growing tobacco. Tobacco is a good dewormer, and we put out, tobacco leaf. And we put out, I was fascinated by this, but we put out free feeding minerals. So we put them on this big kind of wooden spool, and I just put all of these different minerals in. And you're like, are the goats going to figure this out? And they know exactly which ones they need. And they go right up to it, and they drain that, and they leave the other half a dozen things because they don't need it at that time. And as the seasons change, that thing changes. But you're taking it a step further, and the animals are almost taking care of all of this in and of itself, which clearly points at some kind of, I mean, it's miraculous. It's like some kind of intelligent design. They just know. And it's not because they're up in the head and they have all the science. They just know. And it's such an interesting thing to contrast that with us as this human species, Homo sapiens, the wise animal. And in so many ways, we're not wise. We're so disconnected from that. We're so disconnected from nature. What has reconnecting to the land, to the animals, observing this, what's it taught you about life as a whole, or what's it taught you about the nature of, you know, the way in which we live these days, the modern life of a human?
I think it's really put into perspective like what is truly valuable and why it is valuable to me. You know, living the way that we do with the sovereignty and the freedom that we have also comes with a large deal of responsibility for things that are truly valuable, like a working septic system that you are entirely responsible for, a well with your own personal water that you are entirely responsible for. That is, you know, water is a very important thing. Procuring your own nourishment is a very important and valuable thing. Things that somebody cannot take from you, that are truly valuable to you, that you need every single day. I mean, I can't think of anything further than that, really. And I mean, the experiences that I get to have with the woman that I love doing what we're doing out there. I mean, it's undeniable how much our relationship has grown, just, interacting with the animals together. Like I'm a one-man show. Anything that I need help with, she's right there with me, like working animals. And I think it's always funny. Like I always feel very much more connected to her after spending an hour working cattle or working sheep together, because it's like draws us closer, communicating together and like working through stressful scenarios with animals. And then you also get to, experience the life constantly. We're constantly having baby lambs, calves,
Wow.
but then with that comes death as well. And, a greater appreciation for that life.
There seems to be this emerging, and everything you just said, I think, is why this is alluring to people, this kind of life, getting back to the land. It's why my wife and I and my family are pursuing this. It's so meaningful. It makes us rich in a different way. It's like rich in the currency of happiness. It's so good. My son is at an age now where he helps me with the chores and he pulls the chicken eggs out. And it's so rewarding. It's so full circle. But we were also laughing the other day that in the social media sphere, everything's painted as like, homestead inn, and it's, women in sundresses, and it's all sunshine and rainbows, and nobody's ever talking about the sheer amount of poop or deworming the goats or, oh, another chicken's dead. Or how much harder is the reality of ranching and farming than sometimes it might be portrayed in the fake artificial world of social media?
Well, I'll actually give you a real life example that happened just last week. And this comes as also a consequence of like the diversity of so many different animal species I have. So I had a barn cat, a feral barn cat that I'd inherited with the property. He'd been there like, 5-6 years. That place was his home. And I've also got about 5 guardian dogs. And 2 of my guardian dogs are, for a lack of better terms, more or less feral. They live on the pastures with their sheep, and they are very serious about their job. I do not lose lambs, and I got coyotes, cougars.
Yep.
They do not let anything near their sheep. But one of them killed my barn cat, and I found it so hard not to take it personally. Like I was so upset at the dogs. But then it's like, the day before that, I'm looking out into the pasture and I see one of them like posted up under a tree looking after a pair of newborn lambs laying right there. I know 100% nothing's gonna get those lambs. And then the other one posted up on another section of the pasture looking after another group of lambs. It's like that same like intuition and instinct that makes them, and drive, their nature really, that makes them so good at their job. Also, just so happened that my feral barn cat, that I really liked him. Like it was one of those weird things that like in the mornings I would go out to the barn, I'd put out a little food for him, and he would only come within like 10 to 12 feet of me, but he would like give me a little meow that he was thankful, and he would like come along, and he kept the mice under control in the barn and everything. But that kind of stuff sucks, and you want to like sit there and be like, man, what could I have done different? Is it my fault? Is it just he was in the wrong place at the wrong time? Is this a lesson in like the unfairness of life sometimes? And it's like you were saying, it's a very appealing life. The whole aspect of the pretty sundresses out there collecting your chicken eggs and everything is cool until you go out into the pasture and find feathers everywhere, and hawks have been picking off your hens, and you take the good with the bad. And you can't have really good days unless you experience some really bad days, and that's just what makes you appreciate them more.
On that theme, when you put so much love and care and attention into the land and into the animals, knowing that one day they're going to become food. One day you're going to have to take their life, or they're going off to, the person that's going to do that. And this is I would say, the unrealistic and detached message of the vegan. You can't say you love animals and, eat meat. And they'd go a step further and say, you can't say you love animals and breed animals for consumption. But I think what we're talking about here is just the reality of life, that like life requires death, and you're giving these animals what sounds like a beautiful life. But what's it been like to do that? What's it been like to have over 200 living species on your property, care for them so much, and then have to take life, or have to willingly give that animal over for the life to be taken?
Well, it's like you said, it's the cycle of life. In order to, continue giving life, there must be death. It doesn't matter if you're a vegan or a vegetarian or a carnivore. There is some aspect of death happening in the procurement of your food. And it just so happens that, unless you're a vegan or a vegetarian kind of growing all of your own stuff in your yard, which, some are, like I would prefer to be as involved in that entire process as possible. Like I want to know my animal. I want to respect it. I want it to live with dignity. I want to be out there in the freezing cold or the stupid hot, hauling water, hauling feed, hauling hay to take care of them. And, it's hard to not feel, I guess, sad whenever they're going to go, but I try my best to not feel sad for them because I want to feel thankful. Mm-hmm. Like I'm thankful for the nourishment that I'm going to get from them. And it brings about raising animals in this way can only happen if you actually have a deep care and love for your animals. If you don't really care for them that much, it's a different story. But that's also what winds up making it come full circle and more fulfilling whenever you actually have that beef or that lamb or that pork that you were involved in every process of that animal's life. You did, and you know that you did everything that you can to give them the absolute best life that they could, and there was as little suffering as possible. Mm-hmm.
Do you think, I know of course not everybody can do this and not everybody wants to, but do you think it's increasingly important that more people get closer to their food or even become farmers and ranchers, given the fact that the modern food system is obviously fragile, and that the average age of the standard farmer now is over 50 years old? Over a third of farmers and ranchers are over 65 years old. How important is it for more people to get closer to their food, or actually actively participating in the way that you are raising it?
I think that the biggest problem that started happening is whenever food started being viewed as a burden. And that's all starting back in the 1970s, whenever, headline news articles were floating around that the average farmer can now feed we'll say 1,000 people. And it's that's great in terms of economic progress. But then what it wound up doing is it turned food into a burden. And so farming became cheaper, and one farmer started doing it as cheaply and big as absolutely possible. The people started eating worse and going for more convenience because they didn't have to be involved so much in their food. And so I don't think that everybody needs to be a farmer. We need doctors and lawyers and friggin' accountants and bankers and all that stuff too. But it certainly doesn't hurt to, like you said, get closer to your food. You don't need to be growing your own stuff or keeping chickens, but know the person that you're getting it from. And I started in a metropolitan city. I sought out farmers markets. I sought out butcher joints that I could follow the farm on Instagram and see their cows grazing on pasture. I'm hey, this is pretty cool. Getting as close to that as I can instead of going to Ralph's and like buying the cheaper or more convenient option of beef, going to a farmer's market and shaking a woman's hand that like her hand also, collected the eggs from the coop, and she can tell me like, oh yeah, I raise Rhode Island Reds and Wyandottes and Barred Rocks. I like this chicken, or like these blue eggs are from this breed. Like those things are pretty important in the grand scheme of becoming healthier, I think.
Healthier for you, like the human animal. Obviously, the nutritional superiority of the food is vastly different from something that was raised more conventionally. But if you get closer to the food, if you're willing to shake the hand that feeds you, we are collectively taking a little bit of power back, because that you can't get close to these people that are behind these giant monocrop or these giant CAFO operations that are using thousands of tons of synthetic fertilizers that are destroying the soil and giving you a subpar product at the end of it. Forget the life of the animal, awful, bad way to go out, all of that stuff. So it's the whole like vote with your dollar. If you can do this, and it's really important that you do if you can, because the more of us that do that, the more it's going to create like new incentives and new outcomes. And, a huge bonus at the end of it is you get a nutritionally superior product that tastes delicious. Like we were talking off air about your fruit scrap fed pork and how just wildly different that is to anything you can pick up in the supermarket.
And I mean, and the fulfillment that I feel after raising my own beef for 18 months and then having it, that fulfillment is no different than, say somebody who, goes out to eat or gets the convenient option DoorDash to their doorstep, and instead they go to the farmer's market and buy some fresh produce, buy some ingredients, put forth some more effort, some energy to like make and create this nice meal. That fulfillment that they get from that, from the extra effort that they gave, is going to give them the same amount of fulfillment that I get. It's like I think that's the whole idea behind it.
Yeah, I love that. You talked about beef and cattle. You have an interesting take about why bull beef can be superior, and that's not the common knowledge. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Well, in terms of eating beef for the health benefits, which a lot of us, I mean, most people listening to this podcast for sure are going to be interested in. I mean, you can start it out by just saying like, what happens to a human male whenever you cut off their testosterone supply? They get fat. They have intramuscular fat throughout their body, and that in beef has been viewed as like the more appealing thing. Why does everybody love Wagyu beef? Because it's freaking like, it's got this like snowflake fat sprinkled throughout it. But whenever you raise bulls and they're producing testosterone for their entire lives, the end product that you get is very lean. It's somebody, my good buddy Nolan said, and I thought it was perfect, like supports like, right? So if you're a male who's like trying to be as vital as possible, like supports like. I want to eat a bull. I want to get that energy. Like, and there's nothing wrong with it from like a livestock producer standpoint. Raising steers and cutting your bulls makes it easier. They're going to put on fat. They're going to gain weight quicker so that you can take them to processing quicker, and they're easier to manage. They're more docile. They're not breeding all your cows and heifers. You only have one bull there breeding. You know exactly what's breeding what. But I'm not really doing a breeding operation, right. So I only run stocker bulls. I keep bulls on my pasture and only bulls, and they're spaced out like 4 to 5 months apart, so that whenever I process one, the next one has like another 4 to 5 months to grow out and finish, so that I have constant supply of beef in my freezer. And then the people I love and care about closest to me also have beef in their freezer.
Yeah, that's huge. There's definitely there's a flavor preference and a change when you start going more regenerative, and you get the grass-fed and finished. You could argue that it's not as tasty until you get really appreciative of that flavor and of that leanness. And I think that you're dead right. The energy of what you want to consume and what you want to be, and the energy of like for like. And I just can't help but almost tragically laugh at the parallel here between like the human animal, like you said, you cut off the balls, whether it's physically or proverbially, and you become fatter, more docile, weaker, easier to control, because it seems that the world doesn't want a bunch of high T men running around because they're rambunctious and they cause trouble, and they're not going to so easily lay down and say, oh yes, tell me exactly what to do and I'll do it, sir. So it's interesting that, because that is the story, right? And I'd be very down to try some bull beef, because I want some of that energy in my life.
I mean, I'm pretty sure that old Will Harris down at White Oak Pastures, I'm pretty sure he does the same. It's, the more holistic approach, and like I can really get behind that, And then, like you said, what you wind up with is the more it's more nutritionally superior. But it was kind of, for a moment, disheartening at first when I processed my first bowl, and Rami has very refined taste buds, we'll say. She eats very tasty foods, and so whenever we grilled up my first ribeye, she was like, oh, it's it didn't melt in her mouth the way that a Wagyu does. And she was kind of, that stung for a moment, but I'm like, well, yeah, it's not fatty. It was very lean. It had very good flavor, but it required a little bit more chewing, which for me is not a problem.
I mean, it's the way it's probably supposed to be. It's much more natural.
Right.
But again, that's indicative of how disconnected we've become from the natural order of things. That, yeah, we do want the Wagyu or the big fatty ribeye, because it tastes delicious and we love a bit of mouth pleasure. But, more natural is usually, in a lot of cases, more right, because it's who we are. It's how the animals are supposed to be. I did want to ask, speaking of rambunctious, high T animals that are unpredictable, do you have any funny, scary, harrowing stories from the farm? Have you ever come face to face with an angry bull and been like, oh shit, this is going to get ugly real quick? Or has everything been pretty chill? Got any cool stories though?
I mean, I got trampled over by one of my bulls at one point. Shoot.
Not fun.
I mean, just yesterday I was loading up both of my horses to haul them, and literally the moment that I started loading them, thunder started crashing from the storm that was rolling in, and my thoroughbred, freaked out, broke her harness, broke her halter, and trampled me over while I was hauling the other horse in. And
Damn.
I mean, it's just some of the fun stuff that happens, but
don't see too much of that stuff on the Instagram.
Right. And it's also one of those, Instagram's the highlight reel, and I'm probably guilty of it too. A lot of what I post is the newborn lambs and the animals doing good. But I think that the reality of it is, for every one of those really beautiful composed reels that I have of all these awesome moments, there's moments of me standing up to my knees in septic waste, of my own septic waste, or fixing all the broken stuff, broken pipes from cattle trampling it, or dead lambs that I've had to pull out. There's a lot of that too.
Yeah I wanted to shift gears slightly for the last little bit of this conversation and bring it home into a new phase of life that you and your wife Remy are about to enter as parents. How are you reconciling with that? Your wife is 20 weeks, I think you were saying, so about halfway, so soon enough becoming a father. What do you feel about that? What does it mean for you to be a good father? What are you aspiring to? What kind of life do you want to lead for your child?
Well, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't, a little bit nervous. I'm excited, obviously, but there are nerves associated. I would say, the types of nerves that come with a high risk situation. It feels extremely high risk. As surprising as it sounds, I might be a little bit more scared and nervous than I did going into combat. As weird as that sounds, but I feel like a lot of people just dive into so many different parenting advice books on how to like structure their life for their child, and they get so wrapped around the axle of like setting their child up for success. And I kind of just want to, you know, take it to the point where we're implementing this child into every aspect of our life. Like, we're not changing our life to fit our child. We want our child to be like included in every single part of our life and all the rich experiences that we're kind of presented with out on the land. That being said, I do have a pretty like structured and regimented like mindset in life, just naturally from the military. And so something I've really trying to get accustomed to is becoming more malleable, more flexible with having a child around, because there's going to be times that I won't be able to do certain things. And then I'm also like, right now I'm trying to set the farm up to a point that it's more resilient and doesn't need nearly as much of my personal touch every single day, so that whenever the baby comes, like I know that I'm not going to be able to spend so many hours out in the pastures, like piddling with animals. So I'm kind of getting prepared for that as well.
Yeah, kiddos are definitely going to throw some curveballs your way. Yeah. That's for sure. One of my favorite quotes is that children will destroy your current life and replace it with a better one.
I like that.
And dude, it's so true. I'm really excited for you. And all of those things that you are feeling is exactly what I think most of us men feel, even to the point where you said it's almost scarier than going to combat, because this feels a little more outside of your control. Like, you're bringing a tiny little human into the world, and it's got to come through your wife. And it's a trip. Talk about growing up again. Nothing will force you to give your head a wobble and get your shit right. Like, quite like having a kid, you know?
Yeah.
What would you like your adult kid to say about you in reflection for who you was as a father?
I guess just that I was there. Just that I was there.
Presence is big, man. Presence is really big. Yeah, you can't buy that. And there's no running off and earning a massive salary and, you know, having cool things or vacations that can make up for presence, a present parent. So I like that a lot. Well, thank you for sharing this conversation with me today, man. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate what you do. I think it's massively important, probably more so than you give yourself credit for sometimes, to do what you do, to actually work with the land, on the land, heal the soil, and then be willing to share a little bit of that. I think it is actually more special than you think it is. I think it's important, really important. I think this is the direction we have to continue moving in, and these are the kind of conversations we need to have. And I just appreciate you taking time out of the busy schedule to come here and have a chat with me today.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you, brother.
You'll have to come out sometime.
I would love to come and see it. Love to come and see it. Where can people go to keep up with what you guys are getting up to, and, you know, keep up with Pontious Ranches? And is there any links or, you know, usernames or whatever people can go and follow?
Well, that's just it. Just Pontious_ranches is the Instagram. I try to post as much as I can on there, you know, moving animals around, new life being born, and all that fun stuff.
Let's go. Yeah. And more new life coming soon.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, brother. Thank you for tuning into the show. We will see you next week, fam. Peace out. All right, friends. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Radical Health Radio. We got a fresh new podcast for you every Wednesday. If you enjoyed the show, consider liking, subscribing, reviewing, and rating us on your podcast platform. It helps us spread this message of radical health. We'll see you next week.